The concrete underneath me was cold, sucking the warmth from my bones. The cell smelt of sweat, old food, and a kind of despair that clings to you like a second skin. Another wave of tremors hit me. Not from the cold, I'd gotten used to that. It was the pills, or rather, the lack of them. Once, my hands were steady enough to nail two pieces of wood together without splitting one. Now they shook so bad I could barely hold a spoon. Wrecker, they called me once. John Ward, master builder. Could have had my own construction company, crew of guys looking up to me. Maybe a nice house in the suburbs, a picket fence. Then the accident. Shattered my leg, and everything shattered along with it. The painkillers were a godsend at first. Then they were all I thought about. All I could score, steal, beg for. And then there was the robbery. Stupid, desperate. And Lily saw me, her dad, hauled up in court like a common crook. Last visitor's day, her eyes didn't look at me the same way, like I was a stranger wearing her daddy's face. That hurt more than the prison bars. The lock rattled, snapping me out of the haze. He wasn't a guard, too fancy a suit for those thugs. Guy looked like he'd broken more necks than laid bricks. Scanned me like I was livestock.
John Ward?
His voice was all gravel. Call me Wrecker, I ground out. Didn't like that he used my real name. Made things too real.
Got an offer for you, Wrecker. Kind of job only a man in your situation might be interested in.
The way he said situation sent a chill down my spine. Don't like the sound of that, I said, but my voice sounded hoarse, even to me. He tossed a folder onto my bunk. Photos spilled out. Some lush island, the kind you see in vacation brochures, along with guys in camo, holding nasty-looking guns.
Have you ever hunted before, or have you ever been hunted?
My skin prickled. Hunting was for deer, not men. Some sick joke? Then another photo slid out. A thick stack of cash, the kind that could bury my debts and start a whole new life.
The rules are simple,
the man said, his eyes as cold as the cell floor.
5 days, one island. You survive, money's yours, your record is wiped clean, and we get you out of here. If you don't...
He shrugged.
Well, you ain't exactly got much left to lose, do you?
I stared at the cash, then flashed back to my memory of Lily's face from Visitor's Day. The disgust in her eyes. This was crazy. Had to be. But what did I have left here but those tremors and my memories? What kind of people do this? Hunt guys. Words felt like rocks in my mouth.
Bored ultra-rich ones,
he said with a smirk that made my blood boil.
The kind with enough money and power to make anything a game.
Then he added, the hook that caught me.
I hear you got survival skills. Boy Scouts, made it to Eagle, right?
A flash of heat surged through me. That was before. Before everything went to hell. I was damn good at knots, shelters, all of it. Got Lily those badges with her, back when I was still her dad. So? Don't see how making a campfire helps against guns, I scoffed. But inside, something desperate was stirring.
We picked you for a reason, Wrecker. You got guts, but you're also on the edge. That's the mix we're betting on.
He paused, letting the silence stretch.
So what's it gonna be? Rot in here or take a shot at getting your life back?
I looked around the cell, the years stretching ahead of me like an empty highway. Then I pictured Lily again, the money, a chance to maybe fix things. I knew it was insane, but crazier than staying here. Okay, I'm in, I said, the words tasting bitter on my tongue. What the hell had I just gotten myself into? About a week later, some more Armani-wearing suits came to visit me and had me fill out what seemed like days' worth of paperwork. They managed to get some mysterious permit so I can get out for family emergency. I was told they knew the warden, and as a personal favor, he'd open the door wide open with a snap of their fingers any time they wanted. On the day of my departure, they had me drink some vile-tasting liquid as I was lifted into a helicopter, and next thing I knew, I was waking up on a gurney. Confused and with a slight headache, I only saw blurred figures pushing me along what seemed to be a military hallway. I've never been in the military, but from all the movies I've seen, it seemed like I was in one now. They took my watch. Everything else that defined me was already gone. No orange jumpsuit, no grimy cell bars. But my watch, that was Lily's gift. 10 years old, and she'd saved all her quarters to buy it. The cheap digital kind with the blaring alarm. But to me, that watch was worth more than any Rolex out there. They replaced my watch with a metal tag, like a damn dog collar. Participant 009. The Apex woman kept calling it a facility. Sterile walls, white coats. But something about the way they looked at me, not a patient, a test subject. My blood roared in my ears, every flinch, every nervous tick analyzed.
Physical assessment today.
Another white coat, ex-military, way he carried himself. Led me down concrete corridors into this glass room. Dumbbells, treadmill, the works. Then he left. I laughed, shook my head at how dumb this all was. But I circled that room like a caged animal. Every panel, every seam I examined. Construction work. That was something I knew stronger than they did. Found the weak points, how it was bolted together. I started picturing how to turn their fancy gym against them if I had to. They had a whole crew, bunch of guys with more brawn than brains, swaggering around. The Russian, Petrov, the one they kept hinting was the real deal, looked at me like I was some bug to squash. I let them think whatever they wanted. My muscles ached, my shoulder throbbing where that shiv got me. But all those years on the job taught me one thing. The smart guy ain't always the biggest. Then it came. A manila envelope shoved under the door. No words, just a drawing. Lily's messy scrawl. Birds and flowers, and right in the middle, the words.
I miss you, Daddy.
That girl. She was my rock, the reason I kept breathing. But seeing her like that, on that fancy spa paper no less, tore me apart. Her words, they echoed the last visit.
You promised you wouldn't leave again.
My eyes burned, but no tears would fall. Not in this place. I refolded the note, tucked it under my bare mattress. They wanted to break me? Lily was both my reason to fight and a weapon they could still use. That night, all the participants, all 8 of us, were treated to a very nice dinner spread. You name it, it was there. I'm assuming the bottles of wine they had were worth more than what I'd make in a year or two. The host, an older-looking man with an Eastern European accent, explained the rules to us. The rule was simply to stay alive for 5 days. On the evening of the 5th day, a horn would sound off at 6 p.m. and we'd win our prize. He waxed poetically about evolution and how we modern men have lost our ability to feel and truly know what it's like to live. As he spoke, all I could think about was getting that lamb rib and stabbing him in the neck multiple times to end this blasphemous parody of a secret society. But hey, I did volunteer, and that pot at the end of the rainbow, well, it was a life changer. The next morning they blindfolded me. Flight was short. First the plane, then a boat ride. But when they pulled off the blindfold, damn near knocked me over. Not a prison, this was paradise. Trees so thick you couldn't see 2 yards into them. Ocean water so clear it shimmered like a damn diamond. But those eyes, watching from the shadows. This wasn't some weekend getaway. Apex Isle, the hunt was on. Day 1 had begun, and it was heralded by the loud horn sound blasting through the clandestine island. Instinct took over. Not panic, but that focused hyper-awareness you get right before a roof collapses. Gotta scan terrain, find cover. I took off, stumbling along the beach. Needed a place the big guys wouldn't naturally pick. My leg gave out, sending me sprawling on the sand. It flared up, a fire in my calf. Found a tree, thick enough trunk. The canopy would hide me. My tool was a joke, a little serrated hunting knife. But I'd framed houses on less. Branches, vines, Anything to make a platform high enough to avoid predators, hidden enough to pass casual glances. By the time the first drone buzzed overhead, I had my haven. It wasn't much, but it was mine. Took a whole day. That's when I saw it, not far from my makeshift nest, a length of tripwire nearly invisible across a game trail. Sloppy placement, but the snare itself, that was vicious, brought an icy wave over me. This wasn't about chasing us with guns blazing. This was about toying, breaking us down piece by piece. I kept moving. Lily's bird sketches popped into my head. The eagle, sharp eyes, the knowledge of high places. I tried to think like that. Find water, find food, find how these bastards were tracking us. The first night was hell. Buzzing, biting things I couldn't see. The fear of what crawled on those leaves beneath me gnawing worse than any bug bite. Every snapping branch had me crouched, knife out, heart slamming against my ribs. Morning came like a fever dream. The sun filtered through the leaves, hot and sticky. I watched a drone, sleek and silent, cruising just feet below the canopy. My breath hitched, but it passed on, its indifferent camera eyes scanning the jungle. That's when it hit me. They were playing with us, making us think we were the only clever ones. Down on the forest floor, it was a whole other world. Every damn plant seemed to want to either eat me or leave me itching like crazy. Those scout skills Lily scoffed at, turns out, those were what kept me going. Find safe water, identify edible berries the monkeys ate. It was slow and miserable, and every step a gamble. That leg kept twinging, a constant reminder of the fight back in the yards. On the second day, I stumbled on death. Wasn't gore that got me, but the smell, sweet and sickly, clinging to the damp air. Found her just off the trail, tangled mess of limbs in a ditch. The apex tag was on her wrist, 012. Hadn't seen her in the facility, maybe one they shipped in separate. She had this hopeful smile on her face, even in death. I knelt beside her, the old anger bubbling up. They'd killed this girl slow, let the animals get her for their sick show. Then the practical side of me kicked in. Found her pack, scavenged her knife, better than my makeshift shiv. Took some of the dried meat she'd been hoarding too. Survivor's guilt gnawed at me, but it was either that or starve. That afternoon, it happened. The boar, big, bristly monster, tusks that could have gutted me in one shot. I'd heard it before I saw it, the grunting and that awful tearing sound as it rooted for food. The scout motto popped into my head, be prepared. Not that you can prepare for the sight of death barreling towards you. Blind panic almost did me in. Leg wouldn't cooperate, caught on a root. The beast turned, not stupid, could smell my panic. Charged. I scrambled for a low-hanging branch, somehow hoisting myself out of its path. It skidded to a halt beneath me, confused. It was then I saw the nest, a messy clump of sticks, and a pissed-off mother wasp the size of my thumb. I aimed my weight, gave that branch a hard yank. Nest came down right on the boar's back. You wouldn't believe the sound. Buzzing from hell itself and that damn boar squealing, running blind back into the jungle. I clung to my branch till my arm screamed and then dropped, landing hard. That leg buckled under me, and I let out a yell of my own. Then I laughed, aching, bleeding, but I'd tricked it. Used their own damn jungle against them. Apex, whoever was watching, they couldn't plan for everything. The package came that night, dropped near the base of my tree, signaled by the drone blinking red. I hauled it up, heart pounding. Night vision goggles. My reward for staying alive. A taunt, sure, but also a damn lifeline in this darkness. Slipped them on, and the world shifted, green and grainy. I could see. Not perfectly, but it was better than being blind. The dawn of day 3 found me on the move. Now I could track, at least follow a trail at night with less fear of tripping into another snare. Petrov's tracks were obvious. Big Guy didn't care about being subtle. More concerning, he was circling what looked like the high ground. Had this psycho claimed the best territory on the damn island? That was when the plan began to form. Not survival. Victory. Yeah, that was mad. Maybe the hunger talking. But that girl back on the trail, her grinning at her own damn death, it lit a fire in me. Lily never saw me quit, and those apex bastards sure as hell weren't going to either. Found his leftovers 2 days later. Bones picked clean by the sun and scavengers, but it was the boots that gave him away. Participant 004, ex-soldier with a bad attitude. Apex had hyped him up in the prep materials, thought I recognized his swagger. Now it was buzzard bait. The sight turned my stomach. Not pity, but a cold realization. These bastards wanted our deaths to be a spectacle. But if this was what happened to even a skilled soldier, then my flimsy plan didn't mean squat. I needed something to even the odds. Then I saw it, snagged on a fallen branch, a compound bow and arrows. The string was frayed but still in working condition, and one arrow was snapped clean, but the quiver held 2 more, tips gleaming. This was someone else's death prize, never collected. I held them up to the light, never fired one before, but that desperation gives you a different kind of focus. Next came the drones. At first, I hated the things. Their constant hum a reminder I was just prey. But then I started paying attention. Noticed how they hovered at the edge of clearing, followed predictable paths back towards the beach. They had to be operating on schedules, batteries, or some program dictating their rounds. The idea came at night of the 3rd day as I perched in my tree fort, restless even with the goggles. The drones were my eyes on Petrov. He was out there, hunting like the animal he was, and those drones were his trail markers. The thought was exhilarating and terrifying all at once. It was her screaming that snapped me out of my scheming. A high-pitched wail cutting through the night, and it was close. I strapped on the goggles, the green glow washing over the rustling jungle below. It took me a minute to focus, then I saw them. Petrov, moving like a predator, every step precise, gun cradled in his arms. But it was the woman that made me go cold. Emily, that was her name. Young, with a runner's build, but no match for him. Petrov had driven her into a clearing, was deliberately cornering her. Anger and fear clawed at my throat. I wasn't a fighter, never was the hero type. But watching that, it was like a flashback to the knife stab against my ribs when I was in general population. And then Lily's eyes turning away the last time she'd visited me in the pen. I had a goddamn weepob now, a chance to be more than just the next victim. My first shot was wild, landed 20 yards short, thudding into the earth, startling Petrov more than Emily. He crouched, scanning the tree line. My heart hammered a drum solo in my chest. I had maybe one more shot before he figured out where I was. Drew back the second arrow. It wasn't instinct, just dumb luck maybe that I aimed high this time, aiming for Petrov's shoulder to distract, to wound if I could. The bowstring sang as I let the arrow loose. It wasn't a clean hit. Struck his arm higher than I was aiming for, sending his rifle flying. Emily took off, crashing into the jungle while Petrov roared, a raw, wounded animal sound. He was clutching his arm, blood already seeping between his fingers. I stayed still as the grave. The drone buzzed closer, drawn to the noise. Petrov was scanning the darkness, eyes narrowed, probably cursing every language he knew. It took every ounce of control I had to not make a break for it. After an eternity, the drone moved on, and Petrov limped away, back in the direction I knew his camp likely was. The shakes hit me then. That was close, too damn close. He knew someone was messing with him now. Petrov wasn't the kind to back away from a fight, the kind that got hunted instead of hunting. The night's prize wasn't anything fancy. A suture kit tucked inside a waterproof pouch. Apex playing their sick doctor games. I sat back, sweat cooling on my skin. What was I becoming to even think of fixing myself up when Emily was out there alone, probably hurt too? But this was about survival, right? My own twisted lily-shaped logic. Because the truth was, every day I stayed alive felt like a win. That girl in the ditch wouldn't last. Hell, neither would Petrov if I played this right. Apex wanted a show? I was just getting started giving him one. My little tree haven was no longer enough. With Petrov hunting me on top of the Apex bastards, I needed to go on the offensive. The bow was a weapon, but I needed my old tools back, a hammer, nails, the knowledge of how things break and how they hold together. That third night, I barely slept. Every rustle seemed like him closing in. But the goggles, they let me see the traps, the faint trail I'd laid for him. It was a madman's plan, pitting my desperation against his killer instinct. Spent the morning of the fourth day scavenging. Busted open supply caches. The drones dropped. Half-built structures I guessed were meant for later stages of the hunt. Nails were the real prize. Bent and rusty, but better than nothing. Whittled down some sturdy branches, and with the scavenged twine, that bow started transforming. First, tripwires. Not just to alert, but to steer. I strung them low across dense undergrowth, the kind of places Petrov would naturally bulldoze his way through. They weren't meant to hold him, just to slow him down, guide him in the direction I wanted. This wasn't the enigmatic wilderness anymore, not entirely. Using the old construction jargon from my foreman days, I started turning the jungle into my job site. Found old survey markers the Apex crews had left, subtle orange tags that started painting a map in my head, their base camp, water sources, the damn volcano at the island's heart. Petrov had his territory mapped out too, the places he favored for hunting. Each broken twig, each trampled vine was like code to decipher. My markings were even fainter, a pebble arranged a certain way on a rock, an unnatural pattern of broken leaves that only I would recognize. The waiting was the worst part. I crouched near the tripwire, arrow ready, but knowing full well the bow wasn't meant for close combat. The drone passed over twice, its blinking red eye indifferent to the drama about to unfold below. Heard him before I saw him. That guttural Russian curse meant he'd stumbled right into my snare. Then the branches snapping, the enraged bellow as he charged through, tearing at the cloth. He'd fall for it, but not for long. Knocked my arrow, crept closer. My plan wasn't fancy. Wound him again, make him desperate. The second he took his eyes off the obvious threat, I'd be at his flank. He was a mess, bloody scratches all over his face, that wounded shoulder still seeping through the makeshift bandage. My arrow found its mark, not clean like I hoped, but it grazed his thigh, sending him sprawling with another vicious curse. Petrov wasn't stupid, though. Even hurt, his eyes darted around, honed in on me in seconds. His rifle, I saw it lying in the dirt just out of reach. We both lunged. The fight was a blur of pain and instinct. His hand closed around my throat, those eyes burning with rage more than any animalistic bloodlust. My free hand scrabbled, found the knife scavenged from that dead girl. Not skill, just pure terror, guided it into his side. He let out a grunt, staggered backward. It gave me the second I needed to break free, rolling away. Petrov was clutching his wound, blood gushing between his fingers now.
"You die slow, American!"
He snarled through gritted teeth. I didn't bother with words. Turned and ran, ignoring the burning in my leg and the ragged gasps tearing at my lungs. Petrov would track me, relentless as ever, but now he was bleeding out too. It bought me time, and time was the advantage I needed now. The jungle swallowed me like a shadow. I limped and stumbled, but I knew every twist and turn of this part of the island. It was my damn construction map, branches and leaves my blueprint for survival. Petrov was behind me, slower now, but no less relentless. His cursing trailed through the trees, each grunt like a hammer blow against my skull. But I kept moving. The pain, the ragged breaths, those were just part of the job now. There had been bad days on site, accidents I swore I'd never recover from. This was just another contract gone to hell. Only this time, if I failed, it was Lily left paying the price. The apex higher-ups, they were watching, I knew it. Probably in some swanky room with their whiskey and cigars, betting on whether I'd make it another day. Well, I was giving them one hell of a show. The underdog, the guy with heart, or maybe just too dumb to give up the ghost. The thought made me spit out a bitter laugh. Nightfall didn't bring relief, just a change in the terms of the fight. Petrov was smart enough to heal. I caught glimpses of him through the goggles, clumsy stitches closing that side wound. Still, he wouldn't risk a chase in the pitch black. It gave me a few critical hours. That was when the next prize appeared. Not dropped near my usual haven, but placed right against a thick tree trunk, almost impossible to miss in the dim green glow. Inside the pack, every damn medical supply I could need, except one. No painkillers. It was cruel, calculated. Apex wasn't just hunting me anymore. They were breaking me down, piece by painful piece. Every stitch I pulled tight, patching up the wound Petrov gave me, sent a wave of white-hot pain through my body. But it also ignited a cold fury in me. They wanted to see how much I could endure? Fine, let them watch. I used the antibiotic salve, the clean bandages. Each moment was fuel, a reminder of why I couldn't give up, why I had to turn this whole damn island into my weapon. The volcano was the key. I'd seen it in the schematics they'd shown us back at the facility. The old maps labeled it dormant, but those same maps showed a network of fissures, old lava tunnels just beneath the island's skin. Petrov, he wanted a clean kill. Me, I wanted him lost, swallowed up by the jungle just like that first girl I'd found. My direction wasn't random anymore. Each step, each subtle trail marker I left pushed Petrov closer to the mountain. He'd picked up my scent again, his grunts and curses louder than before. The predator felt cornered, rage taking the place of his usual cold precision. He caught me at sunrise of the 5th day, cornering me near a shallow stream. No words now, just his rifle leveled and that murderous look in his eyes. I flung myself behind a boulder, heard the bullet whiz past. He wasn't aiming to kill yet, wanted to drag this out. But the wound in his side, that slowed him. I wasn't a fighter, never was, but I could plan, and I could run like hell when I had to. Lured him higher. My leg was a throbbing mess, each step a jolt of agony. But Petrov was hurting too, his pace less certain. I was leaving a trail now, obvious footprints, torn branches, leading him straight to the volcano's base. He roared out in frustration when he finally realized my plan, but it was too late. The ground ahead was treacherous, old volcanic rock that crumbled underfoot. He wouldn't risk a shot now, not with the terrain shifting, not when we both knew what waited beneath us. I scrambled to the highest point I could find, a jagged ledge offering a narrow view of the slope below. Petrov was there, hesitating as the earth trembled beneath his boots. "This is your arena now, comrade," I yelled out. It wasn't a taunt, just a statement of fact. I could have ended it then, had my bow, an arrow aimed at his back. But something in me, maybe that last flicker of humanity Lily believed in, stopped my hand. This wasn't justice, not some eye for an eye revenge in this God-forsaken place. Petrov was a monster, but he was Apex's creation. They were the ones I wanted to see fall. Petrov was trapped, and he knew it. He stalked back and forth along the slope, searching for an escape route that didn't exist. Then his gaze settled on the volcano's mouth, black scar against the vibrant jungle. That was my opening. I sprinted along the ridge, kicking loose rocks, sending them tumbling down towards him. He dove for cover, a clumsy move for a man used to having the upper hand. Now, it was the hunted who became the hunter. He wouldn't follow me into the tunnels, not right away. Pride and desperation would drive him, but first, he'd try to take me out from range. It was a long shot, literally, but I wasn't giving him the chance. The volcano was a labyrinth, but it was my kind of labyrinth. Those prep sessions where they lectured us about geology, they'd never imagined it would be the thing that helped me survive. Old lava tubes ran like cracked veins through the earth, the walls porous and thin in places. I could sense Petrov moving below, his heavy footfalls on the rock echoing back up. My plan was simple, as brutal as anything Apex could conjure up. I found a thin spot, a place where the ceiling looked ready to give way. It would take calculated force. One hard blow and the whole cavern could become his tomb. No more arrows. Didn't need them. The bow I'd fashioned turned into a makeshift lever, wedged beneath a loose boulder teetering right above the tunnel. All I had to do was wait. It was the opposite of every job I'd ever done. Not building, but orchestrating destruction. When Petrov appeared, gun raised, he looked less like a hunter and more like a desperate animal. His wound had reopened, staining the whole side of his shirt in dark crimson. It was almost a pathetic sight, the great hunter of Apex reduced to this. A sliver of guilt tried to claw its way up my throat. Just like me, he'd been tricked, promised a prize that was never meant to be his. Just like me, he was a pawn in their game. But then Lily's face, haunted and scared, flashed in my mind. The choice suddenly became terrifyingly clear. I could be better than Petrov, better than Apex, or I could sink to their level. With a roar, I kicked out at the boulder's base. There was a rumble, a deafening crack. The tunnel ceiling came down around Petrov, not a clean kill, but a slow, brutal end. I turned and ran. Didn't look back until the sounds of the collapse faded. Only then, with the adrenaline wearing off, did the trembling start. But it wasn't just fear. It was the realization that this island had carved something out of me, some darkness I wasn't sure was ever going to leave. All I remember after that was blackout. I was out cold. They found me on the beach on that fifth and final day, curled against the sand like driftwood. Had to be a shock to see me, barely alive, while their star attraction was buried under a pile of rock. I barely remember the extraction, the sterile facility blurring in and out as the medics patched me up. The Apex woman met me there, with the same placid smile as the first day.
Congratulations, participant 009. You have won the hunt.
She handed me a metal case, heavy for its size, and also a gold-foiled enveloped with an invitation inside to be a future hunter with a ridiculous number as the prize money. It was blood money, enough to change Lily's life, but also the price of my soul. I took the case, walked out of that place, and as far as they were concerned, disappeared. Back home, I found Lily in a cramped apartment, eyes wide as she opened the door. She barely recognized me, the worn-down, haunted man who stood before her. It took days of stumbling, awkward apologies before her smile came back, hesitant and wary. The money did what I'd hoped, and they kept their promise. I was released immediately, and my record was wiped clean. Got my Lily into a good school. I got a modest house where we could feel safe. But nights still found me awake, the jungle alive in my nightmares, and the weight of Petrov's eyes burning into me. Went to the cops once, laid out everything. Apex, the island, the murders. They looked at me like I was crazy. Maybe the Apex woman had been right. No one would believe a desperate ex-con over a reality show so twisted and popular among the elite and powerful. They'd won, really. Left me alive, but broken. The hunt went on, whispered rumors in the infamous red rooms of the dark net. All I could do was keep building a better life for Lily, brick by brick, knowing that some foundations would always remain cracked.
We hope you have enjoyed this episode of Quantum Dispatches, and stay tuned next week for another thrilling adventure. Thank you for listening.